Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to the Q2 FY22 earnings conference call of Metropolis Healthcare Limited, hosted by IIFL Securities Limited. This conference call may contain forward-looking statements about the company, which are based on the beliefs, opinions, and expectations of the company as on date of this call. The statements are not the guarantees of future performance and involve risks and uncertainties that are difficult to predict. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star then zero on a touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Rahul Jeewani from IIFL Securities Limited. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thanks, Rutuja. So, good morning, everyone. I am Rahul from IIFL Institutional Equities team. I thank the Metropolis management team for giving us the opportunity to host this call today. From Metropolis, we have with us Ms. Ameera Shah, Managing Director, Mr. Vijender Singh, Chief Executive Officer, and Mr. Rakesh Agarwal, Chief Financial Officer. Over to you, ma'am, for your opening comments, and post that we can open the floor to Q&A. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the Q2 FY22 earnings call. I hope you and everyone around you is safe and healthy, and I'm joined today by Vijender, Rakesh, and SGR IR advisors. The presentation and press release has been issued to exchanges and uploaded on our site, and I hope all of you have had the opportunity to go through the same. Let me share with you the business highlights for the quarter. I'm very pleased to share that we've continued the strong business momentum in Q2 FY22 with revenues of 303 crores. An industry-leading EBITDA margin at 30.8% EBITDA, this is before CSR and ESOP, which continues to be at healthy levels in spite of increased investments in new network, marketing costs, and increased employee compensation to retain talent. If we normalize these additional investments, our EBITDA margins would have been at similar levels of last year Q2. We also recorded strong growth in patient visits by 25% year-on-year to 3.3 million, and number of tests have increased by 29% year-on-year to 6.2 million in this quarter. After the severe second wave of COVID-19 in Q1, the COVID cases moderated during Q2. Accordingly, COVID RT-PCR revenues, which contributed 19% to total revenues during Q1, dropped to 14% in this quarter. During the quarter of last year, however, COVID revenue contribution was at its highest at 34%. As COVID cases were quite high in West and South India, and the test prices were also at its highest during that period. In absolute numbers, COVID revenue, which was 100 crores in Q2 last year, dropped to 43 crores Q2 this year, despite the volume of going up. It's also important to note that COVID peaks in different quarters in different parts of the country and impacts companies depending on where each company is strong. As Metropolis is a dominant player in West and South, and COVID peaked in Q2 in West last year, overall revenue and EBITDA growth for Metropolis was impacted this quarter in FY22 because of the high base effect. And you will not see the same pattern in all countries in all companies in the industry. Now coming to the non-COVID business, it continued to grow well. This is evident in the 38% year-on-year growth in our non-COVID business during Q2, recording revenues of 260 crores from non-COVID. While some parts of the country are now back to normalcy, West and South India are still gradually opening up from lockdown, and consumption patterns are still to be normalized to pre-COVID levels. While overall quarter-on-quarter growth looks subdued, if we look at pure non-COVID business, after separating COVID PCR and allied tests, we are seeing a healthy growth quarter-on-quarter. We are clear that focusing on maximizing revenues via the B2C channel, whether it is brick and mortar and digital, and growing specialized tests as a product category in non-COVID is the way forward. We have strengthened and planned our organization chart accordingly, separating focus of domestic and international, and deepening our talent pool in key markets. In the focus city of Bombay alone, in H2, we plan to open close to 100 centers and strengthen front-end delivery and sales force significantly. We had stated that we would be adding a total of 90 labs and 1,800 service centers from FY21 to FY24. During 6 months into FY22, we have added 7 labs and 451 service centers. We plan to add an additional 15 to 20 labs and 250 to 300 service centers in H2 FY22. Most of these new service network comprises of third-party patient service centers, which helps us expand our network coverage in an asset-light manner. The expansion will also enable us to penetrate in the deeper parts of the country where we do not have presence currently. It will also facilitate us to widen our coverage for the home testing business and in turn increase the B2C component of our business. We are investing in not only expanding the service network, but also in terms of hiring talent, creating a digital footprint and marketing initiatives, which altogether will help us enhance our revenue growth in the next few quarters, but in the short term may have a minor impact on our EBITDA margin. In the long-term view, all these initiatives will help us create a stronger consumer connect and thereby scale the business and grow market share. In terms of guidance for H2, we expect all non-COVID business to continue to grow well, except government contracts, which sometimes tend to be lumpy and not consistent quarter by quarter. While we have seen complete normalcy in Q2 FY22 in regards to government contracts, we have seen some volume drop in patient samples in October and November so far. To this extent, we expect a softness in revenue only for government contracts in Q3 FY22. We had previously suggested that our margins in FY22 would be incrementally higher than that of FY21. We reported EBITDA margins of 31.3% in Q1 FY22 and 30% in Q2, despite all large investments being made. While our operational EBITDA is showing good operating leverage, we are further making significant investments in H2 in the areas of digital, network expansion, marketing, and research for specialized tests, which will further strengthen our brand. This may marginally reflect in H2 margins, but overall for the year, we hope to be at similar or incrementally higher levels than last year. On our inorganic strategy, we have made major strides with acquiring Hitech Diagnostic Center, our largest acquisition ever. As we have just completed the transaction, we are working out the final details and charting out the integration plan. At this point of time, both brands will operate separately with the focus on revenue and network growth and only back-end integration. We are extremely confident of integrating this acquisition smoothly and in a time-bound manner, extracting benefits to revenue and cost synergies as we have done with our past acquisition. We have already done a detailed call on Hitech, so we won't comment more at this time. Our M&A strategy revolves around acquiring high-quality, profitable B2C business with a scientific approach to diagnostics. As we have seen in the industry, we have taken a pragmatic view on M&A and acquired at sensible valuations, keeping clear focus on our post-acquisition financial metrics as well. Our near-term objectives will therefore be as follows. Number 1, network expansion as per plan to create a stronger brand profile in existing and new markets via a healthy mix of B2B and B2C. Number 2, investing in a new technology stack that gives us more flexibility to be omnichannel. Number 3, scale our digital efforts across various stakeholders so that we have a better mix of customers. That is B2C, improving efficiencies, optimizing costs, and a customer-friendly brand that is always available and accessible. Number 4, integrate Hitech and drive growth through cost and revenue synergies. And number 5, deepen our leadership team and middle management talent to create more focus on priority areas. So these will be our 5 near-term agenda in the next few months. This is all from my side. Vijender, as our CEO, will now take you through some of the operational parameters.
Thank you, Ameera, and good morning, everyone. Now, let me come to key performance metrics which we track for our progress. Our revenue share of B2C business in focus cities for non-COVID business stood at 60%. We are swiftly progressing towards our near-term target of reaching 65% with customer-centric approach, focused marketing and branding initiatives, and ramping up home testing offerings. Increasing share of B2C business improves customer stickiness, enhances brand equity, and is margin accretive for the company. Hitech, being a focused B2C player with 65% revenue contribution from B2C business, will assist Metropolis to increase its B2C business in focus cities of Chennai and Bangalore. Our focus on increased testing of complex specialized tests has led us to creating a niche for us in the industry. Metropolis is a go-to brand for doctors when it comes to recommending specialized tests. Our efforts in this area have led us to create a sustainable, science-driven business rather than discount and package-driven. Accordingly, our revenue contribution from specialized tests increased to 43% in Q2 FY22 as compared to 39% in Q2 of last year. On home testing business, as we have started earlier, is one of the most important focus area for us. While overall home visit revenue decreased due to reduction of COVID testing, revenue from home visits for non-COVID business increased by 17% on year-on-year basis to rupees 26 crores. Also, with lockdown restrictions easing, many people have again started going to centers as well for the tests. We believe the growth will come from centers as well as home visits for us. Our home visit coverage has been now extended to 89 locations. We are ahead on track to cover 100 locations by FY22. Healthcare industry as a whole has been moving towards digitization, and we are also investing in creating an all-round digital ecosystem for our customers, partners as well as doctors. We are upgrading all our digital capabilities to participate in the health ecosystem and already in active conversations with leading platforms for connectivity. We are also revamping our customer experience with the launch of capabilities like sample tracking and customer-friendly smart reports. Overall, we have been investing about 4 to 5 crores a quarter on an average to drive the digital growth. For our B2B and third-party partners, we have recently rolled out a partner platform to get ready digital access to services from Metropolis, and with improved engagement, potentially leading to higher revenue per partner and more stickiness. For our doctors, making it simple for them to interact with Metropolis to prescribe tests for patients is our key focus. With focused digital and marketing initiatives during FY22, we have witnessed 291% increase in digital users and 431% increase in website views on year-on-year basis. As a result of these efforts, about rupees 23 crores of revenue came through leads generated via digital medium, which is about 8% of Q2 FY22 top line. H1 FY22 has seen 85% revenue growth from digital channels over H2 FY21. Our target is to reach double-digit revenue contribution through digital leads by end of FY22 and increase it significantly over next 3 years. Let me now come to operational numbers which we share. For Q2 FY22, patient visits increased by 25% year-on-year to 3.3 million, and number of tests increased by 29% year-on-year to 6.2 million. Revenue per patient for non-COVID business increased by 12% year-on-year to rupees 976 on the back of improved revenue contribution from specialized non-COVID tests. Including COVID, revenue per patient has decreased by 16% on year-on-year basis to rupees 926 as COVID test prices were much higher last year and we were capped downwards during the year. Our revenue profile among focus, seeding and other cities stood as follows. Focus cities, 5 cities including the city and peripheral area around metropolitan regions contributed 61% to total revenue in Q2 FY22. Seeding cities, 8 cities including the city and peripheral area around the regions contributed 20% to total revenue in Q2 FY22. Rest of the other cities contributed 19% of the revenue in Q2 FY22. With respect to geographic distribution, revenue contribution from West region was 57%, South contributed 25%, North contributed 7%, while the rest was contributed from East and international locations. To conclude from my end, our focus going ahead will continue on improving the B2C revenue contribution of the business, increase the revenue contribution from specialized tests, expand the service network, implement digital initiatives, and ramp up the home visit businesses. That's all from my side. I will now ask Rakesh to take you through the financials. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijender. Good morning to everyone in the call. Let me give you a snapshot of our financial performance for the quarter. Quarter 2 financial year 22 revenue stood at rupees 303 crore as compared to rupees 288 crore in Q2 financial year 21, up by 5% year-on-year. Non-COVID business contributed 86% of the revenue, while COVID RT-PCR contributed the rest 14% of the revenue during quarter 2. Non-COVID revenue stood at rupees 260 crore in Q2 financial year 22 as compared to rupees 189 crore in Q2 financial year 21, that is up by 39% Y-on-Y. COVID RT-PCR revenue stood at 43 crore in Q2 financial year 22 as compared to rupees 100 crore in Q2 financial year 21, as prices were significantly lower this time as compared to last year same period, even though the COVID volumes grew by 36% in the same period. EBITDA before CSR and ESOP stood at rupees 93.2 crore in Q2 financial year 22 at 30.8% as compared to rupees 94.9 crore in Q2 financial year 21 at 32.9%, marginally down by 2% on year-on-year basis on account of increased spending in hiring, new senior talent, digital initiative and network extension, etc. Reported PAT stood at rupees 58.4 crore in Q2 financial year 22 as compared to rupees 60.5 crore in Q2 financial year 21. Coming to our working capital ratios, we continue to improve our debtor days and it has significantly improved from 41 days in March 21 to now 35 days in September 21. Overall, working capital days has increased from 4 days in March 21 to 8 days in September 21 due to a bit higher material inventory because of the COVID crisis in Q1. OFC to EBITDA stood at healthy 85% for H1 financial year 22. Cash and cash equivalents stood at rupees 551 crore as on September 21. We have utilized rupees 336 crore of this cash in October to partially fund the acquisition of Hitech Diagnostics, but still are sitting at a healthy cash balances. We expect to repay the external debt of acquisition within 3-year timeline. That's all from my side. Thank you. We now leave the floor open for Q&A.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Praveen Sahar from Edelweiss Financial. Please go ahead.
Hello. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
Sorry. So, thank you for taking my question. So the first question is related to the expansion, the first half expansion of 7 labs and 451 centers. And as ma'am, you have already said that it's mostly a third party. So should I include this 7 labs also are the third party network?
No, all labs are usually always always managed and run by us. So the 7 labs are either greenfield or what we call is management, lease. But either case, they're always managed by us, and therefore the OPEX sits on our books. But in the 451 centers, majority will be third-party centers, where the OPEX is largely on them. However, we also have OPEX costs that are linked to third-party centers, which include logistics, marketing, sales, courier, cost of consumables, etc. So while it is capex light, it is not OPEX free.
Yeah, right. Got it. And secondly, on the location, so because this first half 7 labs and 451, and then second half also you had given a guidance. So can you give some color on the location where those are?
So these are mostly tier 2 towns in India. And these would be not only across the states in which we are already strong, but also some new states and new markets where Metropolis traditionally is not known as a leading player.
So any mix of a new market versus existing market about this expansion, not only on the first half, but all together?
So it will be approximately, I can take this. It's approximately 60-65% of the network will come in the core market, and the rest will be in the new markets.
Okay. And the next question is related to the non-COVID realization. Non-COVID realization, where we can see that's a improvement, 7% of improvement on the YY side. And also you had highlighted that's 43% revenue from the non-COVID of revenue come from the specialized testing. So Can you give some more color on that? Like what kind of specialized tests are continuously increasing, because 39% to 43%, it's a good jump, and also the realization is picking up here, non-COVID. So where it will stabilize, or at what level of a percentage of specialized contribution would be there? Some color on that in the coming quarters.
So, when we look at specialized tests, we are always going to specialists like neurologists, nephrologists, cardiologists, gastroenterologists, etc., who are looking at patients, obviously, who require specialized diagnosis and then get treatment. And these doctors, when they are doing diagnosis, they are very clear that they want good quality results, because that's very important for them when they're making a decision regarding a surgery or anything else. And therefore, we tend to find this business quite sticky. So the tests that are increasing, to your question, are a very large number of tests. So we have a whole list of them. Some of these, are only done by the top sort of 3-4 players in India, probably the top 3 players in India. And there are some tests which are only done by Metropolis. So it's a combination of the two. And really, in our industry, when you introduce a test, it takes a few years before that test becomes well known amongst doctors and they start actually prescribing it in any serious volume. It's not like pharma, where the pipeline and whoever goes first gets the volume. It's opposite to that, actually. So the key is to keep doing R&D and keep introducing new tests to doctors. And over time, those tests build up in volume, and your specialized portfolio can keep increasing. And the specialized portfolio increasing is not only about starting the test, but it's also about having the scientific team and the doctors who know how to go and get this testing and give very good results and be able to satisfy the doctor. So it's many things that have to come into play. Our goal will be to obviously keep increasing the specialized contribution, because that helps us in our revenue per patient. And like we said, continues to build sticky business. There is no number in mind at this point of time in terms of that this is the number we have to reach, because
so here is sorry ma'am, here in the second quarter, is there some pent up number from the elective surgery and all has come up, or do you see this momentum to continue?
See, this idea of pent up demand is not a reality in healthcare. It may be a reality in other industries, but in healthcare we don't see people holding up their health issues for a quarter or years before it sort of gets released. So no, this is not a pent up demand. This is a genuine growth and a genuine business that's been built, and we see this being quite sustainable.
Okay, great. Thank you, ma'am. And the last question on the expenses, as Brazen sir has mentioned, that's a 4 to 5 crore of additional expenses on the quarterly basis. How long that will continue?
Look, I mean, I think it will definitely continue for many more quarters to come, and probably also increase in time, because as we know, the industry, now there is a health tech industry and now there is also brick and mortar, and our goal is to become an integrated form of both. Therefore, our investments into digital will continue to increase from here. And hopefully that will also give rise to newer growth areas and revenue coming in as well. So I would say that this will definitely increase for the next at least 2 years.
Great. Thank you for taking my question. All the best.
Okay.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rahul Agarwal from InCred Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, good morning and season greetings to everybody at Metropolis. Just 3 questions. Firstly, to start with, first time Metropolis will have a very large player competing in home markets, aiming to build market share. I'm referring to, the Suburban deal which recently happened. I just wanted to pick your thoughts, Ameera, on this. What changes would you expect, in terms of, a legitimate competition coming up? Obviously, Suburban standalone was also a decent competition, but, put together, my sense is there will be some changes which we would expect. So anything you would like to share, any thoughts, as in how does the business change, or how would you handle the situation differently?
Yeah, I think there is a false impression that there is now new competition, because frankly, if you look across India, the competition has been there in every part of the country, and I'm talking about even the top players, for 20 years. So for example, the top 3 chains in India have been in every city. It's not like they have not been in Bombay for a long time. SRL, for example, which is a Fortis subsidiary, has very much been in Bombay as well, in a large capacity. So I think this is a wrong impression that competition is now coming into our home market. I think all of us who are there in diagnostics are very used to having competition, and we can make our own growth journey regardless of it. As we always keep saying, the competition is not between the top 3 players. The competition is of the organized market with the unorganized market. And 90% of the market, 85-90% of the market continues to remain unorganized, and that's where the real opportunity is, which we feel even post-COVID can continue to grow. So our journey will continue to be what we had planned, which is aggressive growth in terms of distribution. We have ramped up also our field force, as we mentioned, in front end. And as we keep doing what we are supposed to do really well, improving experience, improving field force, building distribution, our brand is very strong in our core markets, and we believe that our journeys will continue regardless of any competitor that comes.
Got it. Secondly, you mentioned October, November being soft for the government business. Two-part question to this. Firstly, are you referring to the NACO business? And secondly, what kind of run rate are we doing on revenue? Any number would you like to share in terms of percent to sales or percent to total sales or whatever? What kind of run rate are we? What's the share of that revenue right now?
Yeah, as we've always maintained, we have a few government contracts. NACO is one of them. The government contracts are all sort of single digit of revenue. So it's not a very significant piece. We've only mentioned this because, like we said, this tends to be sometimes lumpy, and therefore we just need to be cognizant of the fact that it may not be consistent in every quarter. So even if we see a slight softness in Q3, we don't expect to see the same softness in Q4. And the annual contract volumes that have been committed by the government institutions will continue to hold on an annual basis. They'll only be probably disproportionate in different quarters.
Got that. Thank you. And just lastly, one small bookkeeping question for Rakesh. What would be the rub-off test, portion of revenue this quarter, either in percentage or absolute number? Thank you.
So rub-off test is very, very negligible. If I tell you that it will be below 5%, maybe around 2-3% of the total revenue.
Okay. Thank you so much and all the best.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Prakash Kapadia from Anived Portfolio Managers. Please go ahead.
Yeah. A couple of questions. What has been the home collection percentage of B2C sales, and now post-vaccination, are customers, still preferring home collection, or they are coming back to centers?
Vijender, you want to take that?
The home visit contribution is about 25% to our total B2C. And definitely we have seen good traction at our centers also. That is what we thought, that we should expand our collection center network. And that's really helping us in stepping up our B2C contribution. And today our B2C contribution has taken a big jump, at least in focus cities. So that's what the current situation. And we believe that both the businesses are going to grow at their own pace. And today on the home visit side, as we continue to expand into newer geographies, today we are present in 89 cities, and our plan is to be in 100 cities in next 6 months.
Okay. And typically, would we have some arrangement when we are having some new cities, or we would take employees on our payroll for home city collection? Because, demand has been pretty volatile in the last 12 to 18 months because of, spikes in COVID. So do we have some arrangements, or do we take employees on our roll? How do we manage this home city collection scale?
Largely, the home visit collection, what we are talking about is in our existing cities. And because home visit can only be delivered when you have a lab infrastructure in that city or in that periphery.
Absolutely.
So as to provide routine results. So largely it's in these cities. So as we expand into newer geographies, home visit is going to be our sales vertical in all the new geographies as well.
Okay. And on the input side, any pressure on raw material or on logistics cost? Any sense on pricing changes in some of our key markets, if any pricing pressure?
From material cost point of view, we have not seen any significant change happening in last
Right.
2 quarters. So we maintain or may have improved a bit on the overall margin from a material cost point of view. From a logistic point of view, yes, because of the surge in demand and all, we have been seeing margin increase in the cost side, and but that's not a very significant jump.
Okay. So no real pricing change, if any, at our end.
Yes.
Okay. And lastly, on Hitech acquisition, you mentioned, a part of the acquisition has been paid, and despite that, we have cash balances. So by when is the balance to be paid, and that'll be paid from internal accruals? We've canceled our fundraising plans?
Yeah. So as we have mentioned earlier, that we have taken a 3-year loan of 300 crore to fund this acquisition, and we believe that much below 3 years, we will be able to pay this from our internal accruals.
Okay. And what has been paid, and what is the balance to be paid for the acquisition in the
So right now we have
absolute
taken 336 crore, and as we have just taken it months back, so we have not paid anything as such right now. But we have a plan of paying this in the next 2.5 years, and it's a periodic payment which will keep happening.
Okay, so there is some internal milestone. As that milestone is done, or is it time-based?
No,
Yeah,
I
so
think there's
they-
some confusion.
Yeah.
To the seller, we have already paid 100% of the full amount. This has been funded 336 crores by our internal accruals and 300 crores by bank financing.
Right.
And what Rakesh is saying is that we will pay the bank between 2 to 3 years.
Okay. Understood.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, understood. That's helpful. Thank you. I'll come back if I have more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Pooja Bhatia from Morgan Stanley. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. On the acquisition front, I just want to understand if this is a fair understanding that the size of potential deals may be smaller or even, say, deferred for the next 2 years, given that the recent Hitech deal will utilize cash and add little debt on your books in the near term.
You mean in terms of new acquisition?
Yes.
So I think at this point of time, we just want to digest what has been done. So I don't think at this point of time we are, anything specific that we are looking to announce. But of course, as time moves on, if there are other acquisitions which are smaller, then we would consider them if they are strategically fitting our requirements.
Okay. And the 300 crore debt raise, at what cost is this?
This is below 5%.
5%.
They're under 5%.
Okay. Just one more from my side. Is that pricing power that you see in these specialized tests, given that there is low competition, and have you undertaken any in the last 2 years?
We have expanded prices, increased prices, wherever we think is necessary. We have not done it in the last 2 years. I think we had done it 2 years ago. But there are tests on which there is opportunity to do a price increase. Vijender, did we do a price increase on specialized tests anytime in the last 2 years?
No, not much, because largely it was competitive already prices, so we did not touch much.
So our
That
goal
was
is
largely on
rather
B2C
than-
only.
Yeah. Our goal is rather than, keep increasing prices, because at this point, like Rakesh said, we are not facing any great pressure on input costs. I would say only manpower and talent is probably the only input cost, which is probably under some pressure. But otherwise, we're not facing some input pressure significantly, and therefore we want to make sure that pricing remains competitive. And while we have done some marginal increases, like you said, on specialized tests and some on B2C, we do believe we have the pricing power if we choose to. But at this point of time, it doesn't make sense to keep expanding the difference between the unorganized and organized sector. It makes more sense to try and increase market share by keeping the distance between unorganized and organized not too much.
Understood. Just to follow on that, given that specialized is now chunkable at 43%, any thoughts on what would be the addressable market of this segment? Just want to know whether routine tests will be growing faster than specialized, given that 85% of the population in the country has never taken a diagnostic test. So what kind of growth do we see between these two segments?
I wish I had some data for you, but unfortunately there is no third-party data available on the sector. So we are not able to really have growth rates by cuts and segments. My sense would be that the specialized category, and this is just a gut instinct, but the specialized category, which is much smaller out of the entire diagnostics pie. So you can assume that if out of 100 is the entire diagnostics pie, and if 65, 70 is routine tests, and 30 is, let's say, semi-specialized and specialized, definitely we would be finding that this 30%, I think, would be growing probably at a faster pace because of one is of a smaller base, and second, we are discovering so many, sort of different diseases and infections. And also, the number of semi-specialized and specialized tests are much higher in terms of varieties. And therefore, even though none of them have very significant volume, but each of them is contributing sort of the end of the tail. So together, they are probably growing much faster.
Understood. And one last, if I may, just want to know what is the allied test contribution this quarter?
Rakesh?
Yeah, as I mentioned, it is around 3% of the total revenue.
Got it. I'll get back in the queue. Thank you.
Thank you. Reminder to the participants to ask a question, please press star and 1. The next question is from the line of Chirag Astani from Burgundy Asset Management. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking the time out. My first question is based on sort of your competitive pricing. So I think Metropolis has higher prices for both routine and specialized tests than some of their competitors, even in same cities. So my question is, how do you sort of maintain these prices, and do you think you can continue to maintain them going forward as competition intensifies?
See, when we talk about competition intensifying, there are brick and mortar players as well as potential health tech players. And what we are seeing is that there is a very clear segmentation difference. There is the illness side and there is the wellness side. On the illness side, where somebody is sick, they go to a doctor then recommends a test and a prescription. And the doctor's word and influence still matters in where the illness test is performed because the doctor uses it to treat the patient. We find that pricing is, and our ability to have some pricing power continues to be quite high. I think on the other side, which is on the wellness side, where consumers are making decisions on their own, that is the area where it is growing very fast, but pricing is also getting eroded as quickly. And therefore, the wellness component is something, an area to play in. The value wellness component, which is the low price wellness, is an area that's growing fast and there should be participation in it. But knowing that the margins are going to be more incremental and less very definitive. So I think there's pricing pressure on that area. At this point, we actually don't play in that area at all. And our wellness is more premium wellness. We do some of value wellness, but it's not very significant. It's mostly premium wellness. And we are concentrating and evaluating as to how do we get into the value wellness space.
Right, that makes sense. And just to follow up and almost an expansion on that. So let's say you're entering a new city, especially tier 1 cities for geographic expansion, where there could be a competitor that already has high market share. For example, a city in the north where some of the competitors are already present. Do you think you'll have to lower prices in those cities when you expand, at least to acquire customers first, or can you still maintain your sort of premium pricing strategy? And especially for tests that are more common and not specialized and unique to the company?
So firstly, pricing is different in different parts of the country. So the same price for a cholesterol is not the same in a Bombay, Delhi, Chennai, or in a small town. Pricing is different depending on the local competition and also depending on the input costs of that region. And therefore, we already localize prices as we go. It's not standardized, at least for the routine and the semi-specialized tests. And the specialized tests, it's national pricing, which is sort of standardized across. So when we usually get into new markets, we do localize the routine. And this is an opportunity where we do, on the illness side, by giving deep discounts, it doesn't help you really build the volume of the business significantly, like I said, because that's not the main reason why somebody is coming to you. On the wellness side, of course, that is an opportunity to grow by discounting prices at the initial period till you build up some market share.
Right, that makes sense. And then just moving on to the introduction of new labs and patient service centers, do you have any estimates on sort of a payback period, especially for third-party centers where obviously operating expenses are lower? As you sort of expand on these labs and patient service centers, do you have an estimate on how long it takes for a payback period?
Sure, Vijender, you want to take that?
Yeah, so from a lab point of view, we have mentioned earlier that it depends upon the geography where we are putting the lab. So some are in focus cities where we expect that in 1.5 year time, we will be able to come to a break-even kind of situation. And maybe in a seeding or other cities, it may take a bit higher, 2.5 years to 3 years. So that is how the overall break-even comes from a lab point of view. And from a collection center point of view, these are third-party centers, and obviously not much of stake is on us because we most of the capex is being is invested by the franchisee partner. So the maturity of these centers generally takes 3 years to come at the peak, or 4 years maybe in the other seeding cities. So that is how it looks like. But from a margin point of view, we generally dilute margin because of the labs, but not much of dilution because of the third-party centers.
But yeah, initially on the third-party centers, initially there is a dilution to not that significant because early days you have to provide him with logistics and other services, consumables and all. So that bit takes away. But over a period of time, the OPEX sits on their head, so it doesn't matter too much in terms of dilution of EBITDA margin as far as third-party centers are concerned.
Right, that makes sense. And then just a final question on the home visits front, especially for the long-term future in an era post-COVID. Do you expect home visits to be a lot more common? And sort of like, I'm trying to understand from a consumer's point of view and from the company's point of view, it makes more sense to have home visits, right? So why do you expect the near term, or what do you expect the long-term percentage of home visits to be? Do you think it'll be a much more prevalent part of the total tests, and sort of in the long term, do you think a lot of the routine tests will be mostly home visits?
Yeah, so home visit definitely is going to be one big lever as far as the diagnostics is concerned, because in India overall home visit services have really grown faster. But there are a bit of challenges in healthcare because you cannot compare healthcare business with any consumer or products, because here a lot of experiences is required, because once the person visits the house, the phlebotomist has to be fully trained. His knowledge about tests should also be to a greater extent. So hence it becomes a little bit challenging. So before jumping into scaling up home visit, you need to have a strong back-end stuff in order to monitor and control the home services as far as experience concerned. But definitely this segment is going to grow. But on the other side, as I said, that the traction into footfalls into our centers is also going to grow. So both these two levers are future levers, and we should continue to focus onto these two levers.
And then just to follow up there, is there a significant difference in sort of margins on home visits versus patients coming into the centers? Like, especially in the long term, you would probably have to open fewer centers if home visits are more common, right? So is there a significant cost benefit there?
See, margin again sorry, ma'am, you can.
They see the patient who goes for home visit is sometimes quite different from the patient who wants to walk into a center. And these don't always become overlapping customers. and therefore we believe that both models will continue to operate and thrive in the future. Everything is not going to move to home visit because there are many reasons why patients don't want home visit. But one of the things we do see is that as the time taken to home visit becomes lower, results become faster. We do believe that this area will continue to grow quite quickly, and that's the direction that we are working in. Overall, if you're comparing 100 patients walking into a center versus a phlebotomist who does a certain, let's say, 10 or 12 visits per day, you'll find the margins to be quite equivalent. But if you're comparing 10 patients walking into a center or 10 visits done by a mobile technician, then you'll find the home visit margins to be better. So it all depends on the volume that's being catered. Rakesh, you want to add anything?
Yeah, just want to add that as we are going into newer geographies and we find that the volume takes time to build up. So from an investment point of view, in the initial period, we are seeing a bit of a dip because we have to have some minimum guarantee kind of situation for the phlebo and the other services. And as we build up from there and we pick up the numbers and volume, then obviously the margin keeps improving upon a period of time. So as we move into new cities, there will be a bit of a compromise on the margin, but it will not be very significant.
Sorry to interrupt. May I request Mr. Chirag to please rejoin the queue? We have participants waiting for the turn.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to ensure that the management is able to address questions from all participants, please limit your questions to 2 per participant. If you have a follow-up question, you may rejoin the queue. The next question is from the line of Anubhav Agarwal from Credit Suisse. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Amir, a couple of questions. First, in the last call, you mentioned about, in the high-tech call, you mentioned that the combined market share for you in Chennai will be 20-25%. Just a clarity there. When you mention about this market share, do you include the hospital segment in the base? For example, typically, hospital segment is about 40-50% of the total market. So, excluding the hospital segment, what will be your market share in Chennai for you and high-tech put together?
Anubhav, as we've mentioned, all these data numbers are frankly not, verified, audited numbers by any third party. These are instinctual numbers because there is no data available. So usually when we are looking at sort of a market share, we are looking at what the hospitals are sort of outsourcing, to in the business, but not necessarily looking at what the hospitals are testing inside the hospital. And therefore, this is more of the OPD market versus an in-hospital business that we are referring to. So I hope that clarifies it.
Okay, so this 20-25% will be out of the OPD segment, roughly.
That's right.
Okay, that clarifies. Secondly, on the margin for next year, roughly, whatever you do in second half this year, fiscal 23 margins will be roughly around that number, or could be better than that?
I think very difficult at this point to give a guidance on margins going forward. There are many changes happening in the industry. As you know, we are investing a lot in digital and moving that forward. So, I think we'll have to come back to you probably, towards the end of this year to be able to tell you sort of what the strategy is for next year, which will obviously give you a clearer view maybe of which direction margins are going.
Sure. And just last question on the home visits from the previous participant. This number today is about 25% for us. Let's say this number settles somewhere about 30-40%. I don't know. I'm just taking a number. But does the country have enough number of phlebotomists to handle that kind of number? Let's say most of the chains reach that number. Do we end up reaching a stage where there will be shortage of phlebotomists?
I don't think so because number one, phlebotomy is not a very difficult approval or accreditation to get. It's a matter of you can be in a course for a few months and become a phlebotomist. So far we have not seen a challenge of finding technicians to do testing, to do collection. But of course the training is not at all existent. So usually we find that once we hire people, there's a good training period of a month before you're actually able to put them in the field.
That's helpful. And this 25% number, what's the trend that you're seeing in tier 1? Is this a much higher number? In tier 2, it's a lower number. What's the trend you're seeing there?
Yeah, metro cities is probably the maximum. We are not seeing the same numbers in smaller towns, simply because, convenience or lack of is not such a bigger issue in a smaller town. So wherever you see a lot of traffic and wherever there is, it's difficult to travel, is where obviously home visits is built.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Shram Srinivasan from Goldman Sachs. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Good morning, and thank you for taking my question. Just the first micro one is on your volumes. Can you tell us what the COVID volumes for this quarter was?
Rakesh?
Yeah. So we have done around 6 lakhs tests in the quarter.
Okay. Okay. So, and if I then back out what the non-COVID is, that's about 2.7 million. And comparing it to 2-year back volumes, right? These volumes still are probably 1% kind of CAGR. So just, Ameera and team, just trying to understand non-COVID volumes. When will we likely see an inflection upwards? Is it still? You mentioned at the opening remarks around West and South being slower. So just if you could help us understand non-COVID volumes, how the trajectory could improve here on.
See, we have to understand first how healthcare works, right? So firstly, for example, when you think about FMCG or you think about fashion or beauty or any of these things, there could be a pent-up demand because people have been sitting at home and now suddenly they want to go out and therefore everybody wants to go and shop and some of that demand spills forward. But that's not how healthcare works, because if you were unwell during the lockdown, then you had a cough and cold, and normally you would have gone and seen a doctor and you would have got tests and you were trying to figure out what it is. And because of COVID, you just didn't go to a doctor because you were scared of getting further ill or getting the infection, and you treated yourself with Crocin at home. So that testing cannot stay as a pent-up demand and come out later. It has just disappeared. Because it was there at that time and then it was not required later. The same way, when all of us were sitting at home for the past year and a half and not really going out to restaurants, eating outside, going to work, the number of infections just generally came down. And therefore, when the number of infections come down, or there are less accidents, and therefore there are less people who have broken a leg, or there are so many things that happen when you are actually out of your house. All of those things came to a standstill the minute lockdown came into play. And the reality is, in India, while we keep talking about COVID in different quarters, COVID has not been consistent across quarters in every region of the country. So if you talk to somebody from Bombay versus Delhi versus Hyderabad versus Calcutta, you will find that each of their COVID experience was in a different quarter or in a different month, because it peaked in different places. Also, what we are not counting for is the variable of how each state government acted. So the state government of Maharashtra was actually probably the most disciplined around lockdown for the longest period. And therefore you'll even see consumption patterns in Maharashtra, even for other industries, have not recovered fully to pre-COVID levels because they have been very, very careful in keeping people in their homes. So I think, it's very difficult to predict at this point of time exactly how things are going to move, because it is not based on a want, but it is based on a need. And that need will start only increasing with the significant growth when everything is opened up in Maharashtra, which I think has now started to happen, when movie theaters, malls, all of that. Till a month ago, you needed a COVID certificate to go into a mall. So people were not going to malls in Maharashtra. So I think as things have now opened in Maharashtra and South India, I think you'll start to see the beginning of some normalcy. As we start to see the beginning of some normalcy, people will then start getting sick, because they start engaging with life outside their home, and then we will see healthcare numbers start to again increase because consumers will become patient.
Got it. So fair to assume that we will go back to a historical run rate of volume growth I'm just talking non-COVID here. You're saying timing is uncertain, but you think nothing has changed during the pandemic to kind of disrupt the volume growth story. I think that's the key.
Not at all. Yeah, absolutely. Not at all. Because, finally people get sick and they need blood tests. So it's not that there has been some structural change where suddenly everybody is doing tests at home or, by point of care or something like that. Nothing like that has changed. It is just simply a timing issue.
Got it. Second question is something that you alluded to in previous calls, Ameera, is on doctor prescriptions for higher tests. This should be a tailwind, right? Just looking at your numbers, I know maybe early days again, we're still doing 2 tests per patient. But just interacting with doctors, are you getting the sense that given how COVID has kind of flummoxed many of them in terms of how to diagnose, do you see that as a structural tailwind picking up?
In terms of more tests per prescription?
Per prescription, yes.
Not really, Shyam, honestly, because how they treat COVID is going to be different from how they treat other diseases. So, for example, if there's a neurologist, it's not everybody is going to just start randomly adding a COVID test to their prescription or any other test to their prescription now because COVID has happened. We also have to remember that a large number of people have lost jobs and have been badly impacted economically. And I think doctors would be also cognizant of that and not try to add tests which are unnecessary, they feel, for the diagnosis. So I don't see any structural reason why suddenly the number of tests in the prescription should go up in terms of recommendations. It may go up because bundling of tests, if it increases in your strategy, then it may increase the number of tests per patient.
Got it. Okay. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Cinderella Thomas from Centrum Broking Limited. Please go ahead.
Thanks for taking my question. Ameera, I just wanted to understand, in terms of you highlighted that this year's EBITDA margin would be higher, and you also commented that commenting on the next year EBITDA margin right now would be slightly difficult. But from a improvement aspect, because we are in the expansion mode also, given that we have already announced. So how do you see from a beyond 22 adjusting for the acquisition as well as for the expansion plan? Do you see we would be able to at least maintain these EBITDA margin levels, or you see certain risk, or if you could highlight the way to look at it?
Yeah, I can comment on H2 at this point of time because we have visibility on that. And as we said, in H2, we will be expanding our network, and that will, add some additional costs. Not only network expansion, but digital initiatives, marketing increase, all of that will add some cost. But hopefully all of that will also give us some better revenue growth, if not immediately, then over the next few quarters. So all of this is being done more as an investment versus just an increase in underlying cost. And we have mentioned that despite these increased costs, our overall EBITDA for this year, we believe should still be equivalent or incrementally higher than what it was all of 2021. So I think that's a pretty fair direction. I think for, like I said, 22, 23, we'll have to come back to you maybe towards the end of the quarter.
But the broad understanding of increased volume growth coming either way of the acquisition or the volume expansion plans should enable us the growth, right, at the top line.
No, of course. The acquisition will definitely be consolidated, and then there will be growth, organic growth on top of the acquisition as well. So that will definitely come in. But if you are talking about EBITDA margin expansion, even high-tech margin is very similar to Metropolis's. So just by arithmetic, it's not going to expand. It will only expand when synergies, outcomes actually start to be seen in the numbers.
And how long would you think for the synergies? Any timeline on that?
As we mentioned in the last call, the synergies will happen over the next. It's a 3-year plan. The first year will be more gradual. It will pick up in the second year in a more significant manner, and then obviously peak in the third year.
Okay, this is helpful. And just one more question on the side of how do you see the wellness versus illness? Do you see any change in it post-COVID scenario? Any increased demand specifically in the metro regions versus the other part of India? Do you see any trend emerging here on this side?
We are definitely seeing wellness, sort of a budget wellness, grow quite quickly. And that's something which has been hastened by COVID because a lot of the budget wellness is more digitally driven. And when people have been more online, that's an area which is growing quite quickly. So that's definitely, I would say, one change which has happened because of COVID.
And if I may just ask a follow on this, that if we look at the digitalization to be an important aspect going ahead, would that, like, do we have any figure in mind which would give us some idea over kind of cost savings that we can expect?
Because of digitalization?
Yes.
So, I mean, digitalization has two parts, right? One is the internal digitalization, which brings about better productivity and efficiency. And the second digitalization is consumer engagement, towards digital. So while we are working on both of them, and it's for the internal digitalization, which is giving us the efficiency and productivity benefits, which is exactly what is balancing out all the new investments that we are making, whether it is in network, in distribution, in marketing. And therefore, we are able to sort of see margins still come out at similar levels of last year or higher, only because of these efforts that we are making of digitalization. So we are definitely seeing, good cost savings when we are doing all these efforts internally. On the external side, in terms of engagement with customers and consumers, at this point, this is an investment, right? Because it's not going to give you any savings, but you're hoping that as you make engagement with consumers much easier and more convenient for consumers, this will lead to hopefully more consumers coming to you and faster growth.
Great. I think this is very helpful, Ameera. Thank you so much and all the best to the team.
Sure.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Prashant Nair from Ambit Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi. Just one clarification. Can you, give us what the growth in pure non-COVID tests was, test revenues was, QOQ? That is stripped off COVID as well as allied tests.
So that is approximately 19% quarter-on-quarter.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Amit Kadam from Canara Robeco. Please go ahead. Mr. Amit Kadam, please go ahead with the question. Your line is unmuted.
Hello. Yeah. Am I audible?
We cannot hear you properly. Your voice is too low, sir.
Okay. Is it fine now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Hi, ma'am. So I have two questions. First is on the network expansion plan. So we stated 1,800 centers for next 3 years. So just wanted to know, why this 1,800?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr.
Hello?
Kadam, but we cannot hear you properly, sir.
Is it fine now?
Yes.
Okay. So my first question is on this network expansion plan of 1,800. So is this like a top-down number which is given by, stated by the management, or is there maybe a number which has been identified by the maybe from the ground level, that these are the gaps and these are the areas where we need such centers, and hence in next 3 years will require such things to meet our growth number. So wanted to know from where this number comes and why this big number instead of coming out via regular 15% of network expansion plan. Because last time also we had done a similar network expansion and then we had to trim down or do that exercise of pruning it by almost 10% as such.
Vijender, you want to take this?
Yeah, I think there has been a proper systematic analytics around it, and as I said, this was based on POPs data and then gap analysis, and basis that only we arrived at this number. So this is first of all is a bottoms-up approach and a derived number, because in India, wherever there is a patient, there is a consumer or there is a human being, there is a blood. That doesn't mean that we have to go to every town and city. So you have to look at your strength, your back-end presence, and then accordingly look at your gaps and then create a team to go for it. As far as the the past is concerned, we've been quite rampant in last 4-5 years in terms of opening collection centers. Now we have a better experience and learning behind us. And for this particular job, we've identified a separate team in order to focus upon the quality of collection centers and good quality of laboratory, including our staff also. So a lot more work has been done, and I'm sure that in coming days we'll not get too much of churn. But let me tell you that this churn basically was on the performance also, because at certain time when you go rampant, you choose the wrong partner. And we believe in our quality at Metropolis. So philosophically, we want that our quality has to be always top of mind, even to our franchisees also. So there we took little corrections, but henceforth we've created a team. There is a proper SOP, there is a proper checklist, which is also kind of verified by our Chief Quality Officer. So we have already created a team called pre-anticical care team, whose job is to actually visit these collection centers and assess them on the ground, and basis that we kind of sign an agreement with them. So there has been a lot more rigor around this.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for it. And then my second question is just wanted to understand, because as we are ramping up the home visit and we are actually banking on our franchisee or networks to cater to that particular rising demand, and we are also positive on that particular thing which is happening. But for that, maybe because we are banking on franchisee and it's their people to do that particular cater to that particular thing, just wanted to know how we are going to tackle or maybe risk mitigate maybe any mishap which could happen. Because for example, the guy who is going to visit the patient and patient home and will be entering the patient home, the safety norms and do how the things, because he will be acting as our representative. So because because this is the first thing which is happening across the industry, and similar things which have happened with Uber or someone guys who had used the maybe third party things to drive a certain things, and when the scaling is happening at a very large speed, some lacuna or leakages or it leads to a mishap, because our is acting as a representative of us and entering our patient's home, and then how do we make sure that our brand image is not tarnished?
See, as I said that there has been a lot of rigor also, and what I just mentioned is we have created a pre-analytical care team, PAC team, and this team directly reports to our quality team, so that there is no interference from the other parties. So first is that their job is to actually visit these centers, assess them, and do on-job training also. Now, as far as collection services are concerned from third party, first of all, if he is interested, if he is keen to do home collections, he has to first register with us. And as soon as he is registered, then our team actually looks at the phlebotomist, about his training, about his other experience stuff, and then only he is allowed to do home visit through a home visit app. Now we have created this home visit app in order to have better controls and monitoring. And if you look at our home visit application, it's a wonderful application, end-to-end services. Also, it also gives us a lot of visibility in terms of live movement of phlebotomist. Sitting at central position, our chief customer experience head can monitor day to day what's happening around in the country as far as home collections are concerned, in terms of their punctuality, in terms of their experience, and then there is a feedback mechanism also. So basis that we track our NPS. So these are some of the processes and systems which we have put in, and there's a huge focus team which actually looks into the experience, and this team is headed by one of our senior person in the company.
So that thing also consists of person identification.
So yeah, basically there are 2-3 things which we do, just to give you an understanding. One is that obviously there is a mix of our own flebo and third party flebo. So it's not that 100% we are going with the third party. So there is a mix of it. Second is whenever we are going with the third party flebo, so we are going with very, very reputed organizations which provide very quality people, and they have a very good background, and they are providing the services for a long period. Third is that there is a verification of these people, background verification and everything is done. And only once everything is cleared, then only we take them in our stride. Obviously, the agreement with the third party is very tight, where we ensure that the third party is responsible for everything if anything happens. Obviously, that also gives us a bit of a cushion. And obviously, the training part, which Vijender mentioned to the Flabo, at least 1 month, 1.5 months, there is a Flabo Academy which we have created internally. And this academy generally gives an absolute thorough training to the Flabos before they really go and start doing the collections. So all these things obviously is to just take care that we don't have a mishap. But as you rightly mentioned, obviously there can be something happening, but we are keeping a very, very tight vigil and control over it.
Fair enough, ma'am. Thanks, sir. That's it.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, due to time constraints, that was the last question for today. I would now like to hand the conference over to the management for closing comments.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you for joining us today. We've had a good, healthy quarter with non-COVID rebounding in a very good way, and we want to continue to see us building on the non-COVID side in terms of volumes and in terms of revenues as we go forward. We believe our network expansion, as we have already cited and detailed, our digital efforts, our team building and strengthening all put us in a very positive foot to be able to really continue this growth spurt. And with all the internal management and cost controls and automation and digitalization we are doing, we hope to continue to balance the new investments with better cost management to be able to continue to deliver industry-leading EBITDA margins. So again, thank you all of you, and hope to chat with you next quarter.
Thank you. On behalf of IIFL Securities Limited, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your line.